It's time for Ezekiel Kralen's latest installment in his Brindlekin Tales about his dog-sitting two little dogs, Flacco and the other one will come to me. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is. One of them is Flacco, though. I remember that much. The SFPD Intervenes is the title of this. Ezekiel Kralen wrote. Email correspondence, October 19th, Part 1, Dog-Sitting Notes from Yesterday. First pic shows Deontay sleeping by the closed ATM nook, who's only been on this block for less than 2 weeks and found tenuous refuge in the ATM alcove until yesterday. Second shows him later that day, slumped down on a discarded office chair. A young black fellow, couldn't be more than 25, God only knows what his childhood was like. His family, schooling, and what depressing situation drove him onto the streets. Like so many houseless, he smokes meth, which helps blunt a harsh reality and makes life somewhat palatable. Deontay still smiles now and then. When he does, it's radiant. He still has all his teeth, and white as pearls. This is no lost soul, not yet. Once the ATM nook was boarded up by late afternoon yesterday, he showed up on my corner, seated in a cushioned swivel office chair by the bus stop and nodding his dreary head while the mellow golden rays of the sun warmed him like a blanket. That blue sleeping bag you see cocooning him in the photo he's had since the first day he arrived on my block. Funny that I'm looking for exactly that kind of chair to replace the one that finally broke at the armrest and became dangerously wobbly as a result, but he needs it more than I do, obviously, so I wouldn't dream of talking him out of it with a $20 bill, which I can't afford anyway, as my October budget is tighter than a dying man's grip on his gigolo's collar. When I proceeded to Rosenberg's that morning, I saw torn-up chicken meat and bones strewn beneath the bus stop's floppy black seats. All those tiny splintery bones that tempt little doggies to scarf them up and possibly choke to death or pierce their stomach lining and bleed out, right where Deke usually parks his furry charges. I'll pick them up later when I return with my coffee, I thought to myself, but a moment later decided to clean everything up now. I used the torn, greasy paper bag that still held some chicken parts to grab as many pieces as possible and toss them into the garbage bin. I did this 2 more times before the sidewalk was clean of all chicken debris and was pleased to have possibly saved a dog's life, not just Flacco and Lucky's. Lucky is the other dog. It was only several minutes after I arrived at Hovel with my Java and was ready to toast an English muffin when Deke called up to my window, shopping cart and hounds in tow, plus his new wagon piled high with whatever. He wanted me to bring down his hefty speaker I had charged overnight and watch the dogs and cart. I told him fine, but I'm nervous about the police telling me to move on in light of the recent sweep and banning shopping carts, so maybe he could check up on me in a few hours. Well, guess what, Watson? I'm sure you can, because so predictable. He scoffed at my concern and request, just as he did last night when I told him I can sit the pups every other day and no more. Considering he's been having me watch over them for 10 or 12 hours at a stretch the last couple of times, so I need the following day free to myself, otherwise I cannot possibly handle the stress. I don't want to hear it, he scowled. You're no friend, you don't really care about the dogs, I'll just take 'em with me now, screw you. Just watch my cart then. Now how can I do that? I retorted. Sit by the window all day? Besides, you said there's a war on shopping carts here in the Castro. Well, he grouched and whined and ridiculed me some more, but then handed me their leashes and told me to get everything set up for them. They already ate, so just bring down some water. He's got to go now. So I escorted the mutts around the corner, tied them to a thin post in one of those movable metal fences the city provides for street maintenance, told them I'll be right back, and hurried upstairs. But before I could enter the building, Deke asked why I put them behind the building. Sorry, that's going to have to be Deke asked why I put them behind the building instead of at the bus stop. I explained to him because it's more discreet in light of his shopping cart, and I'm going to set up the tent so the doggies can have a good rest. The foot traffic, other dogs walking by, the occasional lunatic along Market Street rob the pooches of their sleep, but just around the corner things are more peaceful. Then I dashed upstairs while he moved the cart to where the dogs were leashed, lodging it firmly against the fence by the curb so it couldn't start rolling down the hill by a mere push or tug. He griped and snarled a bit before departing with the pups, wagon and all. and called out to me as he traversed 16th Street, "Thank you! Thank you!" I looked up from where I was tethering the furry quadrupeds to the cart and smiled back. Then ran upstairs to collect the tent, 2 tarps, one to lay beneath the tent, the other to place within it, and what served for bedding, a large mattress cover, and 2 doggy blankets, because the wind was a bit chilly. Lucky and his sister immediately dashed into the tent as soon as I untethered them, curled up in happy balls of brindle. I then reattached their leashes, this time to the back of the cart, said I'll be back in a minute, and rushed Hovel to toast a muffin and slather some I can't believe it's not butter on the 2 halves. Having done that in record time, I slung my smaller backpack over a shoulder, snatched up 2 paper towels, my now cold but still savory coffee, and a folded sheet of cardboard to place in the tent for my own derriere. I now keep a supply of corrugated cardboard in my room to simplify matters. Hurried on down the stairs and back to the hounds, who remained at rest. About 2 hours after we were settled in, a street maintenance crew drove up in a flatbed, while I had begun to secure the tent by tying cord around its fiberglass rods and the bars of a metal fence, for the wind was kicking up. But since the fences would soon be gone, I untied the cord, got the canines out, and started to push the weighty shopping cart up the hill to a street sign with a thick round post that could be used to lodge the cart against it. It was then that the wind blew stronger and caused the tent to roll over with all its blinkety-blankety contents, so I quickly set the cart against that post, tied the pups to it as well, and ran down to grab the tent before it started to roll further down the sidewalk and onto Market Street. Meanwhile, the crew only removed the orange plastic fences and drove away, leaving the metal ones alone, so I didn't have to move my camp in the first place. It was a struggle setting the tent aright with all the contents removed and dumped at my feet because I was fighting with the wind. And the hounds were 30 feet up the hill, barking up a storm. I finally got everything back into place, including the dogs, and secured 2 legs of the tent to the same metal fence as before, which really made a big difference, as the tent remained stable and did not blow over when a gust of wind pummeled it every few seconds. But one nice thing came out of this. As I prepared to move my tent back to its original location, one of the workers told me not to resettle on a particular spot, which he pointed to about 10 feet away, because they were soon going to raise the rectangular concrete slab to work on some cable boxes buried therein. "Is where I am now okay?" I queried. "Yes, you're okay there," he replied with a smile. It was this amicable exchange that impressed me, but I did not look forward to any jackhammers or other ungodly cacophony that may soon disturb our peace. However, they never returned, and thus did not get around to any kind of raucous subsurface activity. It's now 4:45 p.m., and no one's really bothered me. No gendarme has ordered me to move on. No crazy person has harassed me. I've been writing this piece on and off as I hunker down in my nylon hut, and once it's completed, will rush back Hovel to send it off to you, good doctor. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Scampy dropped by and fussed with the contents of Deke's cart while arguing at the air. Though she was communicable and friendly with me, she rummaged through all the items stashed there, mostly clothes and blankets. I told her, please don't take anything, as she is known to do while Deke's sound asleep or away from his cart, since I'm responsible for watching over his possessions. She said okay, and continued rearranging and folding the contents until everything looked impressively neat and orderly. I'm sure Deke will make some wild accusation about my allowing her to do that, but he can get fucked for all I care. That was just Scampy's way of paying a friendly visit with an excuse to linger. While she was rummaging through his things, I saw my missing puffy black jacket in there. So now I know what happened to it. I had folded it along with some blankets around my arm and carried it upstairs. The jacket must have dropped to the ground by the tent, so Deke snatched it up rather than tell me I dropped something. Oh, well, I got it for free, so I decided to place it back in the cart after using it for a butt cushion for a while, because I know he'll say he didn't find it here. He traded for it. I'm making it up. I'm a low-down rotten thief or something in that vein. Not worth touching the tar baby. Part 2. SFPD Intervenes. Deke has yet to return, and it's now 8:16 p.m., and the cops have been over twice. First time around 4 p.m., one policeman who said he's getting complaints about this tent that I need to move everything elsewhere, away from this area, because it's been problematic, referring here to the number of homeless in general, their disruptive behavior, and their shopping carts and tents, all a detriment to local business. I explain my situation, that I live in this building, and I'm watching the dogs for a homeless friend. If I move along now, he'll freak out because he won't know where to find me. He says he knows about Zach, and I should talk with him about finding another spot. I asked him, can he recommend a better location, but he said no, he can't do that. I also suggested he or another cop speak to Deke, as he'll probably accuse me of making this up. He has bipolar mood swings, which make it difficult to reason with him. Then he asked when I think he'll return to pick up the dogs in his cart, so I shrugged my shoulders and said any time between now and midnight. I further told him I'm a homeless advocate for many years and write about them, and offered him my Brindlekin card, but he said no, he doesn't need to see it. He was reasonable overall, even commended me for keeping my spot so tidy. I thanked him, and he departed. So I returned to my tent and dog sitting, took them for a poopy walk, fixed their meal, then my own, all the while deliberating upon Deke's return, how he's going to handle the bad news. Then, as evening fell, I lay down beside the doggies for a peaceful rest. Pause. As I was typing the paragraph above, some gentleman approached my tent and offered me half a roast chicken, which I gratefully accepted. I'll let Deke have it. Fortunately, the mutts remained asleep. That is, they didn't smell the chicken and go nuts. Now, about 20 minutes ago, a bright light shone through my tent. It was the SFPD again. Same dude as before. Let's call him Douglas. Had a female. Let's call her Sarah. Doug was a bit perturbed. Said, I talked to you 4 hours ago, and you're still here. Yes, I replied, and I told you my friend may not show up till around midnight, like the last 2 times he did this to me. Sarah interjected, wanted to know more about my situation, so I told my story like I did to Douglas, but added the following observation, that he is neglectful and marginally abusive to the dogs. I'm seriously thinking about reporting him for animal cruelty. He doesn't love the dogs. He wants them to adore him, but he doesn't adore them back, and now he's kind of abandoning them by dumping them on me more and more often. I love these dogs, but cannot take them in where I live. Sounds like you're enabling him, Douglas declared. You should go your way and he go his. Let him take care of the dogs by himself. Geez, how's that for brazen idiocy, Watson? Is providing assistance for the houseless enabling, or feeding the starving masses loaves and fish? Well, this is a brand new situation, I replied, but I do let him get away with a lot of crap for the sake of these doggies. They're wonderful. Sarah then asked, when either your friend picks up the dogs or we show up to surrender them to animal control, will you get rid of the tent? Certainly, I assured them both. I think they're under pressure by local homeowners to get my tent off the sidewalk, so this has genuinely morphed into a war on the homeless. While I understand that people don't want the unhoused around them, I also understand that it's their own narrow-minded prejudices against the poor that led to this in the first place. The chickens have come home to roost, and some of them live in tents. So what it all came down to is they'll return by midnight, and if Deke hasn't shown up by then, I'll charge him with animal cruelty, and they'll call animal control to pick them up. I made it clear to them I'm ready to stand up to Deke, but my main concern is the pups find a loving home. Sarah explained that animal control would give me a contact number that Deke can call to arrange a meeting where he could try to get them back. That would be a mistake, and not just because he's homeless, I said. I'd rather they be adopted into a loving home. Deke should not get them back. I told her he's too disorganized to do that anyway. Doesn't own a cell phone, wouldn't know where to go. In fact, he'll most likely fly into a rage and start screaming in front of my building, and I'll have to call non-emergency and then probably put a restraining order on him. He'll go mad. How casually Sarah talked about my informing him the dogs have been carted off to animal control, and here's a number he can call, as if he'll blithely accept the situation and simply say, okay. I'll have to lie a bit, tell him the cops threatened to take the dogs if he doesn't show up by midnight and pick them up themselves, rather than tell him I've charged him with animal abuse. But I did inform the cops I've come to an impasse with him. He's hopeless, and I'm grateful that they've intervened. After all, better the police call animal control than yours truly. It's horrible all the way around, as the best solution is nonetheless a sad and scary one. Okay, it's now almost 10:30 p.m., and I'm sitting by my workstation, Deke returned a half hour ago, and when I told him the bad news, he berated me like nobody's business. You should have said nothing to the cops. You should have told them they're your dogs. You should have said there's no law against pitching a tent. Now I got to go into hiding for weeks, lay low. You got the cops after me. You're a good-for-nothing snitch. He also conjured up a tall tale, how he had a backpack stashed in that cart containing $400 worth of bud, but now he's screwed. I told him there was no backpack that I could see, and he replied by asking why was I snooping through his stuff. I wasn't, I explained, but when Scampy showed up and started to rearrange and fold everything, I watched with a hawk's eye to make sure she didn't steal anything, and there was no backpack. Why would I make this up? He retorted in faux outrage, and the arguments went on for some minutes longer. Scampy's not a friend. She steals from my cart all the time. Before I managed to extricate myself from his web of lies and proceed hovelward. So I guess tonight puts an end to my tent adventures and spending any more time with my lovely Brindlekin.